Hi everyone, let's talk about variables in Kotlin. First, let's discuss why we need variables. The answer for that is very simple. We need variables to store values inside our programs. If we need, for example, print someone's age, we need to keep this value in some place inside our program, and then we can print this information. So for example, we have two variables, and now let's talk about how we can define variables in Kotlin, right? The way to do that in Kotlin is first we need to define a variable, and we can indicate that in two different ways. We can start to writing var or val keywords. And after that, we define a name for a variable. For example, here we have a variable age, and here we have a variable name. And then we assign a value for this variable. For example, and for that we use the equal sign. Everything after the equal sign is the variable's value. So for this variable, we have a variable with a number 30 value. And for this variable, we have a value of a string Alessandro, right? And there is a difference why we sometimes use a var keyword and why sometimes we use a val keyword. And the reason for that is when we use a var keyword, we can change the value of a variable later in our program. And when we use a val keyword, we can change its value. So that's why sometimes we call variables defined with a var keyword mutable variables, and variables defined with a val keyword read-only variables. So let's check if our variables really keeps this information we assign it to these variables, right? Let's print the variable age, and let's print the variable name. Let's run our program. And as we can see here, we have third, and this is the value of the variable age, and we have Alessandro, that is the value of the variable name. So in order to check if the different keywords have actually different behaviors, let's check if it works as we described it earlier, right? Let's try to reassign a value for the variable age. Let's reassign 45 for this variable, and let's try to print again. Let's run our program. As we can see here, we have first 30, and after we have 45 as the value for this variable value, right? And as you can see, we indeed changed the variable value. Now let's try to do the same for the variable name. Let's write the name of the variable, in this case name, and let's try to reassign. And as we can see here, the IDE shows this red squiggly line. And when we Also, when we check what the IDE returns for this red squiggly line, the IDE returns val cannot be reassigned, change to var. And if you try to run our program, it won't work. And as you can see, it returns this error message saying val cannot be reassigned again. So let's just erase this line and run our program again. And as we expect, our program works fine again. So that's it for variables in Kotlin. So let's summarize what we learned in this video. First, we learned that we need variables to keep important information inside a program in order to show or do some calculation. And we also need that to define a variable in Kotlin. First, we say we will define a variable using var or val keyword. After that, we define a name for this variable. And using equal sign, we assign a value for this variable. And that's why how we define variables in Kotlin. And when we use a var keyword, we can change the variable's value later, but for variables defined with a val keyword, we can't reassign any value later, right? That's it for this video. I hope you like it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time.